Hello and welcome to another standard video as we take a look at an updated version of the red-black lizard deck with the new Start Your Engines cards from Aetherdrift, since those have perfect synergy with the lizard mechanics from Bloomburrow. And in fact, one of our new cards is also a lizard. The Gastel Thrillseeker is a 2-mana 2/3 with a Start Your Engines mechanic. So if we play this and don't have any speed yet, our speed will go to 1, and then from now on, whenever our opponent loses life for the first time each turn, our speed will increase by 1 with a max speed of 4, and then the Thrillseeker, when it enters, deals 1 damage to target opponents and we gain 1 life. So by itself, if we play Thrillseeker, our speed goes to 1, we deal 1 damage, and we immediately go to 2 speed, and then from now on we can pretty easily increase our speed on the subsequent turns to reach max speed around turn 4. And then once we have max speed, this creature has Death Touch and Haste, so it picks up a significant bonus, making future copies also much better. And then other cards with the Start Your Engines mechanic include Gas Guzzler, so we can already start our engines on turn 1. It enters tapped, and with max speed we can pay a black, sacrifice another creature or vehicle to draw a card. Can be effective in the face of a board wipe, so we can still maybe keep up some mana, sacrifice some creatures in response, and refill our hand. Then the Burnout Bastronaut is probably the better way to start our engines on turn 1, as we get a 1/1 creature with Menace, so that's more likely to then hit the opponent on the following turn to keep increasing our speed, as well as enabling some of our other lizard synergies. We can also pay 2 mana at any point to give this creature 1 extra power until end of turn, and that's going to be much more effective once we have max speed, because then the Bastronaut has double strike. And then our final engine payoff card is Hazoret Godseeker, a 5/3 with Indestructible and Haste, but there's a caveat: Hazoret cannot attack or block unless we have max speed, so it's not a card you really want to play on turn 2. Instead, it's better to have other ways to start our engines, and then play Hazoret once we have max speed, so we can immediately attack for 5, but in the meantime we can always pay a mana, tap Hazoret, and then a creature with power 2 or less cannot be blocked this turn, which can still be useful if there's a bit of a board stall. And then we're combining these with the classic lizards from Bloomburrow, as well as the Vyoshino Pyromancer, which is a more recent addition from Foundations, which got reprinted, a 2/1 that deals 2 damage to target player or planeswalker when it enters the battlefield. Then at 1 mana, we've got the Vine Lasher, which can deal damage to the opponent just by playing a land. So if there is a board stall, this is still a way for us to increase our speed reliably. And the Hired Claw is also great, as we get to deal damage simply by attacking with our lizards. So this is also great in multiples, and can also pay 2 mana to give it an additional +1 counter if our opponent lost a life this turn. Then at 2 mana, one of our preferred plays early on is a Flame Cache Gecko, and our deck is very good at enabling it, so we can already play it turn 2 and have an extra red and black mana to work with, so we can deploy more 2-drops, such as our Pyromancer, or perhaps a Fireglass Mentor, which is a nice source of card advantage in this deck, saying at the beginning of our second main phase, if an opponent lost a life this turn, we get to exile the top 2 cards of our library, choose 1, and until end of turn we may play that card, and that also includes lands. And then the last but certainly not least is Gev, a 3/2 legendary lizard with Ward, making the opponent pay 2 life if they want to target it. And then now if our opponent lost life, our creatures will enter with an additional +1/+1 counter on them, and that also includes our non-lizard creatures, so especially synergistic with our Bastronaut once we get to max speed. And then whenever we cast a lizard spell, Gev deals 1 damage to target opponent, which means that even if we cast a Flame Cache without having previously made the opponent lose life, we still trigger Gav, dealing 1 before the Flame Cache enters, so we still get to make 2 mana, or in the case of a Fireglass Mentor, we get to exile the top 2 cards, and that's also a great way to keep increasing our speed, of course. So as you can see, no removal spells in this list. You could potentially consider Momentum Breaker as a card that can also start our engines, but it can be hit or miss depending on the matchup. Could potentially include Go for the Throat to deal with larger creatures, but this deck is still pretty good at dealing damage, even if we can successfully attack past opposing creatures with cards like Hired Claw, Pyromancer, and Thrillseeker as well, and then eventually Hazoret can also sneak our creatures through, so we don't really need a lot of removal, and this way we have a more consistent curve-out plan that can start our engines as soon as possible and keep stringing together more creatures to deal more damage. And then our mana base also gets to include Rockface Village as a way to give our lizards haste, so that can also be useful to maybe recover from a board wipe. And then lots of red-black dual lands. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. We have what looks like a keepable hand. Double Hazoret's maybe a little awkward, but we'll make it work. There are still situations where our opponent can remove Hazoret with Nowhere to Run or Anoint with Affliction. Dreams of Steel and Oil also could have taken it, but now it's probably going to go for one of our lizards. Taking Thrill Seeker I think makes the most sense, since we want to start our engines next turn and immediately get to 2 speed. Now, I guess double Hired Claw is also an option, but I'll go for Hazoret, just so we can increase our speed. And then hope we can once again attack with Hired Claw, otherwise we won't be increasing our speed to next turn. Opponent's black-white. And yeah, looks like our opponent's maybe keeping up removal for Hired Claw. Still incentivized to play the other copies first. And then we'll see if they have an answer before I attack. Alright, so no upping our speed this turn. So we'll just pass it back. Overlord's fine. So this might be more of a Reanimator deck or a Catramos Exile deck. But yeah, opponent's playing blue as well. So not entirely sure. Don't think I play around a board wipe. Just gonna play Hired Claw here. Get the most damage possible. Fine, Lasher's not bad either, but without a land, I prefer Hired Claw. So that's 5 damage total. Get to 3 speed. And then if we draw lands, we could get to 4 speed, which is max speed, so Hazoret can attack next turn as well. As we see Prankster go to the graveyard. And our opponent's looking to return something. Oculus, I see. Exiling 6 cards from the graveyard. So yeah, that's gonna gum up the ground quite a bit. Alright, now Pyromancer can get us to max speed, so Hazoret can attack. I think that's better than potentially attacking and then being able to pump whatever gets blocked by the 2/2, which is also an option. Yeah, let's just go with Pyromancer. Could also activate Hazoret on one of the Hired Claws and then essentially get in for 4 more damage. If I attack all out, our opponent maybe chumps Hazoret, blocks Hired Claw, still takes 5. Yeah, that's good enough. And then maybe next turn we can activate Hazoret to just get in with unblockable damage. So opponent blocks the way we suspected. And it was another Oculus that was face down, so not a bad thing that we got rid of it. Although they might have another way to reanimate it here as well. And then we might have to rely on Hazoret with Hired Claw triggers to keep getting in for damage, because our opponent's gonna generate 2 more blockers here. Alright, at least they're tapped out. And then we have to worry about our opponents taking us out on the way back. Could technically play another Hazoret just to make a second creature unblockable. Fine Lasher puts them to 5. And then can activate Hazoret. Don't have to target Hired Claw, but in this case I think it makes sense. As we can attack with it. And then pump it once more. Putting our opponent to 1. And then next turn a land is lethal, or just turning one of my lizards sideways. Opponent with a Gearhulk, alright, they can gain some life here. That does make a pretty huge difference. Not really in a position where I want to chump. But yeah, now our opponent goes to 5. And next turn we're facing lethal. So I might need to top deck something. Because I can activate on Hard Claw and I guess still pump it up. So we still get in for 5 exactly. So good thing I pumped Hard Claw last turn. And that's Exactsies. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have what looks like a keepable hand. If Bastronauts can connect, and with Menace that's quite likely, we get to curve Gecko into Mentor. Mentor is a little bit better if we can play it turn 3, for instance, because we won't be able to take advantage of the ability on turn 2. Opponent on a Rabbit deck, so their board is going to grow quite quickly as well. But for now we get to 2 speed. There's an argument for playing another Bastronaut actually, just so we are more likely to increase our speed once again. Although it's not particularly mana efficient. Yeah, I'll still play a Mentor here. It's gonna be a Quest Caller. And then I don't expect him to attack. And Gav a little bit late to the party. Would have been awesome last turn. Can still attack with both Flame Cache and Bastronaut. Just so we get in for 1 damage and increase our speed. Which I'm assuming is worth it. And then we also trigger the Fireglass Mentor. And take it from there. Possible they're afraid of a Pump Spell or a Burn Spell to finish off their creature. Alright, don't mind the double block, so we take out Might Caller before it gets any bigger. And Mentor reveals another Flame Cache. So I'll have to play that first and then Gav. Actually could have saved myself 1 damage by playing the Sulphur Springs first. So, should have been at 20 here. So now we've got a decent shot at getting to max speed next turn. I guess just playing a Mentor, triggering Gav would do it. So then these already have double strike. Alright, so not opposed to playing a Vine Lasher first, triggering Gav. Could go with Offspring, but I want to keep mana up for Fireglass's ability, as well as the Bastronauts. So these now have double strike, so those can attack. I think it's reasonable to attack with Gav as well, since it at least trades, and we've already gotten some good value out of it. Possible that they'll force me to pump a Bastronaut if they double block, but we can still hit a land with a Fireglass, which would trigger Vine Lasher. And getting trades against the Rabbit deck is not a bad thing, because there's a deck that kind of needs critical mass on the board to take over. Opponent double blocks, so I could put Quest Caller first and then pump Bastronaut to still trade for it. So opponent reconsiders. Alright, so if I pump here, then I would take out both of the opponent's creatures, so that seems worthwhile. Take out Quest Caller, their team also shrinks down, and then regular damage, and we are happy with the land. So yeah, that worked out. This game might have looked a little different if her opponent hadn't double blocked the Flame Cache a couple turns ago, because then they would have had an extra Might Caller with additional +1 counters, but they were maybe respecting some additional interaction. Now at max speed we've got lots of great top decks. Can still activate our Rockface Village as well. And a war leader. And Hazret off the top is what I'm talking about. So we can play it. Could just attack with Hazret and the Bastronauts. What if we send everyone? Then let's say they block maybe a Vine Lasher, then our opponent takes 9. I can pump here. Yeah, I think we're fine to attack all out here. And I'll pump. Opponent falls to 1. Won't be able to use any of these, sadly. But don't really see my opponent coming back from this. And their draw seemed quite functional. Multiple Might Callers, Quest Caller. Something like a Hop to It would have been good for them to make multiple blockers. Alright, never mind. Sheltered by Ghosts could still swing the game around. Exiling Hazret. And gaining 5. Alright, so game on. They might just go for +1/+1 to gain 6, but let's see here. So I can play Fire Glass, give it haste. I think we're better off just attacking all out and then pumping Bastronaut multiple times. Could also hang back with Bastronauts to block the War Leader if we think this is not a race we're winning. So yeah, right now I can pump Bastronaut twice, and then what happens? Our opponent takes 6, falls to 1. They can attack me back with 6, and we can kind of go back and forth for a while. Or I can activate Flame Cache, discard a land, and see if we maybe improve our draw step. Alright, find Gav. So let's maybe let damage happen. Another War Leader, alright, that's scary. Oh, that's a free block. I guess they ordered the triggers incorrectly. Alright, so now what's our next move? Probably Fire Glass, just to trigger Gav. And then go to second main, no attacks. And find a land. And then we have to try and line up some blocks. Opponent still attacking. Alright, so I can only pump Astronaut once now. Still gonna be 2-power double strike, so we can take out the War Leader if I double block. And then we'll get our Hazret back. Find a Flame Cache. So opponent's at 17 now. Probably can't afford to attack with Hazret, just get in with Mentor, unless I want to Flame Cache, give it haste. But I might need to use my mana elsewhere. Although I guess our deck tops out at 2, so I'll still be able to play everything. Although if I attack with both, then if I don't hit a creature, the War Leader making a token kills me. But I gotta believe here. Alright, and then a Thrill Seeker looks good. Now we're at 2, so I feel a little bit safer. Phineas. no attacks. And then can still activate Rockface Village. Could also activate Gecko, discard and draw. Or Hazret to make stuff unblockable, but yeah, I imagine we need to keep Hazret as a blocker. So then maybe looking at activating Gecko. Find a Bastronaut, that's not bad. Still would like to get in to trigger Fireglass Mentor, which I guess means attacking with Thrill Seeker. And finds, at this point, yeah, Gav is still fine. So the Bastronaut picks up a counter. Alright, so we should be in decent shape for next turn. Hop to it, that's what we wanted to avoid. Phineas might attack to give them some counters, but nope. So now Hazret could activate on Bastronauts, and then I can pump it 3 times, so that's lethal here. Attack. 2 blockers, there's no blockers, and then pump. Alright, what a game. Might have wanted to stay back with the Bastronaut a turn sooner, so they didn't get that 1 extra attack in with the War Leader with lifelink, but it worked out in the end. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with what looks like a Keeper. Turn 1 Vine Lasher sets up Gecko into Gav. So as long as they don't have 1 mana removal, we're good to go. Lore Keepers, so red-green dinos. So our opponent's creatures are going to get large very quickly, which could be an issue. If they already play the 3 mana 6/6 Hammer Skull, for instance, it's not going to be easy to attack past it. And yeah, there it is on turn 2. Alright, so can't attack, but we can still at least enable Gav by just playing a land, or I guess Mentor, and then second main we can re-evaluate. And find another Vine Lasher we can play. Probably okay to play a Swamp. So yeah, we built up a nice little army on turn 3 already, but if our opponent can keep up playing large dinosaurs, we might find ourselves at a stalemate. For now, a Yearling. And oof, Galta on turn 3. Yeah, that's impressive. At least they don't get to smack me with a Yearling. Do we trade for Hammer Skull? The damage has been done with it. Could also just jump to soak up 6 damage, because at least it doesn't trample. Definitely want to keep Mentor and Gav. We have a land to trigger Vine Lasher, so Gecko, likely the creature I would jump with. Yeah, maybe that's fine here, unless we imagine that we're gonna attack all out next turn and need the extra 2 damage. But I kinda doubt it. We are just hoping to find our Death Touch creatures at some point. So I can, for now, maybe play a land. Go to our second main phase. Hope that Mentor finds some goodies. And I guess a Bastronaut will have to do. And then I still have a land for Vine Lasher to enable the Fireglass Mentor once again. Got our opponent to 10 without actually attacking them, so that's impressive. but our opponent's curve was excellent. And now they get to take out one of my creatures, probably the Fireglass. And this isn't a fight, it just deals damage equal to the creature's power. So, won't be easier to block their dinosaurs. Opponent did indeed take out the Fireglass Mentor, which has done a good job for us at least. And we'll see how aggressive they get. We do not have max speed, so Bastronaut doesn't have double strike yet. So that's an attack for 18. Is there any scenario where we take it and next turn present lethal? So with a land, opponent's at 8. They have 2 blockers. So block, block. And we get in for 5. So would need 3 more damage off the top, which means Hazoret would do it. Our hasty lizard, I guess, won't have haste since we don't have max speed. So is it just Hazoret? I guess another Pyromancer is 3 damage thanks to Gav. I think that's enough outs where I should just take it here, since I don't see myself living for 2 more turns. And yeah, there's a Thrill Seeker. 1 damage to target opponent, you gain 1 life. I think we're going to be 1 damage short here since we don't have max speed. Although I guess I can still pump the Bastronaut, which I hadn't factored in. So we might actually have Exaxes. If I play a land, opponent falls to 6. Block, block. And then we should have 6 exactly. Wow, super close game. We were on the play, which made all the difference, otherwise we easily lose this game, but the opponent's curve was also pretty much perfect. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a keepable hand. So I would prefer to play Bastronaut turn 1, since it's more likely to connect, but we can't make a red mana, so it's gonna have to be a Gas Guzzler. And then next turn, hopefully Flame Cash into Gav. But our opponent might have removal here. Nope, just a Prankster filling the graveyard. Nowhere to run. Okay, let's make the most out of it, so... hit you for 2. Play Flame Cash into Gav. And then next turn... we can keep triggering Gav to increase our speed, eventually setting up a hasty Thrill Seeker as well. Opponent just playing a Prankster, missing a 3rd land, so that's gonna hurt him. Okay, so I can play Hard Claw before attacking, and then might just be double Hard Claw. I think another Claw makes sense. Could still be worth it to attack all out, just so I get 2 more damage in, if we feel like that's going to be relevant. Or I just attack like so, and essentially get in for 5. Yeah, that's probably good enough. Could see myself using the Guzzler's ability for opponent eventually hits their land drops and has a board wipe. And our opponent already chumped to keep their life total high. They could cast a Whale or a Bitter Triumph here. And Gav does have Ward, making them pay 2 life, so opponent goes for a Hard Claw. But that's basically their whole turn. Yeah, this Rakdos Lizard deck is certainly good at punishing clunky opening hands. Although opponent did successfully discard Omniscience, which is something they could put back on the battlefield. So now, if I just cast Thrill Seeker, we have max speed already. So that seems good enough. And then, is our opponent just dead here? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, that's more than enough. Get a Hard Claw trigger, could still play Vine Lasher to trigger Gav. So yeah, slight stumble from our opponents, and that's all it took. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand's a little awkward with both our copies of Hazoret in hand. Can play turn 1 Vine Lasher, turn 2 play Hazoret just to increase our speed. But yeah, Hazoret's not the ideal way to start our engines. So I think this is a mulligan, also because we're on the draw. Having a creature that can't attack or block early seems counterproductive. Alright, this is much better. And then turn 1. I think I like Bastronaut over Vine Lasher, just because we get to start our engine sooner. And then we still have Flame Cache into Gev. Opponent with turn 1 Ladder Elves. So yeah, opponent's got an excellent start on the play. So if they're kind of a mid-range deck with some spot removal and then some larger demons, they could easily disrupt us and then take over with larger threats. Although that's also where Hazoret can come in handy. So definitely advantage opponents. Hoping we can connect with a Bastronaut next turn, which is still possible if they just play 3-drop here. And yeah, there's Annex for the demon deck. So we might only get this one turn to attack unopposed. But we'll make the most out of it. Speed's already up to 2, and Gev makes it pretty easy to keep increasing our speed. And then Hazoret is hopefully how we can break a board stall. Opponent is missing double black, which could matter with some of their demons. For now a Sentinel, pretty good blocker. Hoping they tap out to explore so Bastronaut can still attack. And that's what happens. Go for the throat on top, that's fine. Opponent declines since they're probably looking for black mana. Okay, so Bastronaut has a good attack. And then I could play a Pyromancer, or we could even go for Thrill Seeker, although it's not going to be coming out with haste just yet. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And then next turn we should be able to get to max speed. Opponent found their double black, so at the very least they can now make a demon token. Ooh, Harvester. Yeah, that's painful. Do I block and trade? I guess we don't have Death Touch yet, so never mind. Well, I can still get to max speed at least by just playing a Pyromancer. But now we're pretty far behind, since our opponent can make a demon to stabilize. I guess it might still be worth it to attack before they just remove my Thrill Seeker. Trade happens. Alright, so can Hazoret keep up with a demon that gains him 2 life each turn? Probably not. So we can still play a Gas Guzzler as well, or just activate Hazoret, so Pyromancer gets in for 2. Keeping Hazoret back to block also an option, although black-green could have ways to exile it, or just give it -3/-3. So Hazoret's not even the trump card we would like it to be. So yeah, I'm running out of options here. Guzzler could also jump with Pyromancer, sacrifice it to draw, but I don't think that's going to win us the game either. So yeah, this game seems kind of over to me. I guess I'll still play Hazoret just so we can hold off one of their creatures. But yeah, it's just 2 attacks with a demon token, and that'll be game over. So yeah, as we kind of expected, the Golgari mid-range deck was off to a great start, and eventually they were able to take over. Harvester was also quite effective, but even without it, I don't think we quite have enough to get there. Blast Zone also pretty good against the deck that's all 1 and 2 drops. So we take essentially 8 damage this turn. And our opponent still gets to keep up additional interaction. as if we weren't already super far behind. But it does seem like House Red at least held back the Sentinel. Glissa normally impossible to attack into, but House Red's actually lining up pretty well. So yeah, if you were playing this in a best of 3 setting, I would certainly add some Go for the Throats after sideboard to deal with our larger threats. But here, I think we're at the end of the road. Pyromancer can still activate a Gas Guzzler, perhaps. Or activate House Red to get in for 2, but that's about it. Let's see what we're about to draw. A Thrill Seeker. Alright, let's go out swinging. And pass a turn. The Gas Guzzler can only sacrifice author creatures. And an Edict. Yeah, at this point, it doesn't matter. Good game. And now a Gix's command as well. And not that they needed it. On to the next one. Probably should have chumped to prevent the extra trigger. But there we go. Okay, we're on the play. We have turn 1, probably Bastronaut. Turn 2, Gecko into Pyromancer. Yeah, I like it. So we'll get to increase our speed, facing blue-white. Now Gav also an option. So Gecko into Gav makes more sense. Yeah, whenever you get to play a turn 2 Gecko with the ability to make more mana, you're just off to such a quick start. Of course, very similar to a Burning Tree Emissary. Okay, so opponent's keeping up 2 mana. They could have a counterspell. So we could test out the waters with a Gas Guzzler, and then play Pyromancer. Could also start by attacking. Although if they have an Elspeth Smite, I would prefer triggering Gav. If Pyromancer resolves, then Gas Guzzler would pick up a +1 counter. So let's see here. Yeah, maybe it is still better to attack first. Just so that if they have a counterspell, I still got my damage in to enable Gav's ability. So yeah, now the Gas Guzzler would enter with a +1 counter as well. But we would prefer resolving the Pyromancer. Could have also just pumped the Bastronaut if we wanted to play around a counterspell. Opponent cycles a Shape Thief. So this could be kind of a combo deck with a new red-black Gearhulk, which wants to reanimate creatures. You get to copy it and kind of chain those together. Now a Synthesizer, so might just be an artifact deck after all. And while Synthesizer is very good, it's not the best way to stabilize a board, since the opponent's already at 10, so if we just untap and attack all out, our opponent's dead. So that's how fast it can happen if you've got a good enough start. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a functional hand, I would say. Turn 1 Guzzler, turn 2 Thrill Seeker, Mentor for card advantage. It's not our best possible start by any stretch. But even if Guzzler eats removal, Thrill Seeker still gets us to 2 speed. And this looks to be the Pixie deck. Yeah, don't mind necessarily trading for this, but don't have to. If I trade now, it's maybe a little easier to keep connecting next turn for a Fireglass Mentor. If they have the Edict effect, I guess I would prefer sacking the Guzzler and keeping Thrill Seeker. Because yeah, the ideal play next turn is not another Thrill Seeker, but instead Mentor and then hit a land drop from exile. Or maybe another 1-drop I can play with my Swamp. And if our opponent's got a new Start Your Engines enchantment, making us sack a creature, if we trade it here, we lose Thrill Seekers, so then I don't have a way to enable the Mentor. Whereas now there's still maybe a chance. Alright, Eidetic Memory gets to draw. So we still have a good attack here. And what do we get? A mountain will do. Alright, so next turn I could play another Fireglass. Or play Thrill Seeker first main phase, so we get to max speed and get to attack with haste. Nightmare. At this point probably ditch a Swamp. And then I'm happy hitting another land with a Mentor, potentially. And Gav isn't bad either. But yeah, since we are fine just hitting a land, I think Thrill Seeker, try and hit our land drop, play Gav is fine. They could also have removal for the Mentor, in which case playing hasty Thrill Seekers is not a bad way to go about it. Because they might have this town ain't big enough to bounce one of our things. Alright, just to go for the throats. So happy that the Mentor lives. And we found another land, excellent. And then now, I think I like Gav to set up our additional +1 counters. And then we could play another Fireglass Mentor before attacking, just to trigger those twice. And there's a Momentum Breaker. Thrill Seeker can go now. And a Nightmare, ditch Pyromancer, keep the card draw engines, even though the extra damage would be nice. Another Thrill Seeker's excellent. So we could just empty out our hands now, and then maybe still hit land plus 1-drop with the double Mentor triggers. And then we don't have to worry about additional discard effects, but yeah, opponent scoops it up. Just too much pressure and card advantage all at once. So yeah, this updated version of the red-black lizard deck seems to be the real deal. A very consistent deck with lots of 1 and 2 drops, a solid game plan, and still quite a bit of synergy throughout as well. And then once you move into best of 3, you could still adapt the deck to include more removal if needed, or potentially some discard effects. There's also the lizard that can enter and make the opponent discard at 3 mana, so you have some tools to maybe snipe some 3 mana board wipes before they can come down, because of course the deck will be vulnerable to cards like Brotherhood's Ends and Temporary Lockdown especially as well. So those are cards you want to avoid. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.